Hi guys, hope you guys are doing well and surviving the winter here. I know it's been freezing here in North Carolina, hence wearing things on my head a little bit more because I'm in my office freezing. So I am actually going to try something new for you guys today, and hopefully you like it. Recently, HDYO did a Breaking Down Barriers webinar with Dr. Sarah Tabrizi, and I am going to do a reaction video to it, and we're going to see how this works. And yeah, so here we go. And after this, let me know what you guys think.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this really special edition of Breaking Down Barriers. I'm Jenna Heilman, Executive Director of HDYO. And just as a reminder, this program is about breaking down the different stigmas of Huntington's disease. That could be.
So before we go any further, I want to share a little bit about what this series is and also what this specific video is focusing on. So HDYO does a Breaking Down Barriers series, and it goes into resources and things, research and all of that. This specific video is about a recent study done by Professor Sarah Tabrizi, and it is the HD Young Adult Study, or HD-YAS, I believe is what we had been calling it. And recently, the results were published, and it goes into early HD progression. And so the press release last week talked about impacts of understanding early HD progression. And this is really, really important research, guys, because right now, all over the world, we're really trying to go further into or earlier into HD. And this will help us in so many ways because it truly shows what you can see very early on in the disease. And so I'm really excited about this video and what Sarah Tabrizi specifically will be talking about. But also on here is Dr. Rachel Scahill and Dr. Mina Farag to share the updates. But I've just been really excited to hear about this research and the results from this research, because this is one of the findings that's really going to help us that are early HD kind of move things forward. So anyway, I just wanted to share that really quick before moving forward.
Research, educational stigma, fears. It could be stigmas in social setting, family settings. But today we are going to be talking about a really groundbreaking study called HD-YAS. And I have some amazing guests with me here today to share about what the study is and what the implications are for the next steps, especially for young people and pre-symptomatic prodromal individuals impacted by Huntington's disease. Our first guest, I'll let her introduce herself.
Okay, before we go any further, so you heard Jenna Heilman here, and with HDYO, incredible woman. One of the things that she just said was pre-symptomatic and prodromal. So for those who do not follow me regularly or who do not know the terms when it comes to research or when it comes to HD, when we say prodromal HD, what we are saying is you are gene positive for HD and you are experiencing some cognitive and or behavioral symptoms of HD, no movements, and kind of being in that very, very early point between pre-symptomatic and being able to be clinically diagnosed. Normally for clinical diagnosis, you have to have movements. So you kind of are in this really weird space where I am now, where you're noticing symptoms, they're coming on, you're experiencing decline, but you are not dealing with movement and to a point of receiving that official clinical diagnosis of Huntington's because you don't have movement. And that is that prodromal space. A lot of times there are different terms used. Pre-manifest is another one that is used regularly. And one of the things that Sarah Tabrizi has done is create a staging system on the research side. It's not used in a clinical setting for diagnosis, but on a research side to kind of help with narrowing that down a bit, right? And really being able to put people into a space instead of kind of trying to use so many different terms and not really knowing what to call us in this space over here where we haven't really been, recognized before. Because before it was pre-symptomatic and then early HD, and that was a clinical diagnosis with movements. And so all of this research now, where we're in very, very early HD, is so important and really opens up this space that has not been recognized or focused on at all in HD until the past couple of years. So anyway, just wanted to explain that in case you hear the term prodromal, that means very early HD, but no movements, and just in this kind of in between, and can't receive an official diagnosis.
Really, she doesn't need a lot of introductions to this community. Professor Sarah Tabrizi, welcome.
Hi, delighted to be here, Jenna, and talk about our work.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. And she's got, she brought two of her fellow team members of the HD-YAS study. Mina and Rachel, would love for you to introduce yourselves.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Mina. I'm a clinical research fellow and specialist registrar in neurology. I work alongside Sarah and Rachel at the UCL Huntington's Disease Centre. A fun fact about me is that I enjoy photography, especially capturing moments with my Instax Polaroid film.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm a Principal Research Associate who leads Sarah's imaging team here at the HD Centre. My fun fact is that my dog plays Toto in the next Wicked movie.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I love that they provided a fun fact. That is so cool. Really humanizes them. And I truly love talking to the researchers, young investigators. Sarah Tabrizi has a lot of people in her lab. Sarah Tabrizi herself is incredible, absolutely amazing woman. I have so much respect for her. And I love when I get to talk to her people in her lab and when they say how much they just adore her and respect her. It's so great. So I love that they shared a fun fact, and that's a really cool way to start this off.
That's amazing.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, brief appearance in the current one, but we've got big hopes for the next one.
I need like a paw autograph, please. That would be great.
Yeah. We'll do some
That's
publicity around that when the time comes.
interesting. That kind of derailed. That might be, no, I'm just kidding.
Not important, just a sideline.
Well, I want to pick back at you too because we've gotten to know Sarah. So for those of you who don't recall, we did a fantastic interview with Sarah about biomarkers in Huntington's disease and got to hear a lot about her background. But I always like to take some time to get to know the individuals who we're speaking with, because we may have, one, it's just interesting to get to know how you became involved in Huntington's disease. But two, we have so many young people who are interested in science and want to know a little bit about your background. So Mina and Rachel, I wondered if you take a few minutes and share how you became involved in Huntington's disease research.
So I really love this too, that Jenna does this. It's something I do on the podcast when I have professionals come on. And for me, I always word it as, okay, well, I want you to tell me why HD, and it opens up that whole background of why they got into Huntington's and why they stay. But Jenna made such a good point. There's so many young people who are into research. And it's really become very clear to me as I've really broadened my horizons into the global HD space, how many researchers, young researchers we have that are getting into HD research. And it's so cool because now, they've taken such an interest on what's going on in the brain and what research is being done. And they said, okay, well, I want to make a difference. And they're becoming the next Jeff Carrolls of the world. And if you don't know Jeff Carroll, he's an incredible HD researcher who is also gene positive and makes huge strides for HD, and also was a co-founder for HD-YAS. So, but yeah, I mean, there are so many people, so many young people that I am seeing who are getting into research. So I love that Jenna asked them this stuff.
So I've had a bit of an unusual journey really to reach the HD Centre, and this can illustrate to your young people that you don't necessarily, may take a different path. But I did my first degree in zoology, and then I did a master's in computing. Then I started a PhD studying Alzheimer's disease at the Dementia Research Centre here. But during that time, my path crossed with Sarah, and I could see at that stage what an amazing leader she was and how utterly determined she was to deliver treatments for Huntington's disease. So I was sort of delighted when she actually approached me to ask me to work for her back in 2008. So I used the
So I want to point out something here too. This is not the first young researcher, that I've heard say that Sarah Tabrizi, she's such an amazing leader, or her passion was just so great, and that's why they joined her team. That just really speaks to Sarah Tabrizi's passion for HD as well, and how hard she's going at this. And all these people feel it and they want to be part of her team because of her passion. So kudos to Sarah and her team. And I'm very excited to see that passion kind of spreading, and she gets so many people on her team who become passionate about this too.
The techniques that I'd learned in Alzheimer's disease and applied them to Huntington's disease in her imaging team. So I've been there and loved it ever since. So I've been involved in a lot of big international studies with Sarah, where we've identified biomarkers of disease, and these are now being used widely in clinical trials. So is an incredible satisfaction in something that you do actually you can see the practical application of it and see that it's making a difference. So the next step really was that we wanted to look further back in the disease process, and that's when the HD Young Adult study was born. So I've been involved in that since 2017, and it's been such an exciting time for research, and really such an honour to work with the YAS cohort, and they keep us motivated every single day. So when I started out in HD research back in 2008, there were just no treatments available, and we're just trying to do our best to understand the disease and how it affected the brain. To think that there are now multiple treatment approaches and we're actually getting closer to prevention is just staggering, really. So Sarah's obviously played such a key role in getting us to this stage, and really to have been part of that effort has been inspiring. It's a researcher's dream, really. So that's all I have to say.
My journey into HD research began when I attended a conference where Sarah was delivering an inspiring talk about emerging genetic therapies. I was absolutely captivated by her dedication and work in search for a cure for Huntington's disease. And that really sparked my interest in the field, and hence why I ended up applying for this PhD post. Coming from a medical background, I'm in neurology with a strong interest in clinical research. I found HD particularly compelling because it is caused by a single faulty gene, and this makes HD really an ideal target for clinical research, with the potential not only to develop effective treatments for HD, but also to translate those findings to other genetic and neurological conditions. So I was incredibly excited to join this field and feel really lucky and fortunate to work alongside such an inspiring and supportive team. So for nearly 3 years, I've sort of dedicated my efforts and time to HD research through my PhD and involvement in the HD-YAS study. And this work has given me so much privilege in meeting really extraordinary people, engaging with the HD community. So I was very fortunate enough to sort of collaborate and work alongside the HDYO, HDA, and also meeting people through the clinic at Queen Square.
So I want to say something else. This is another theme that I keep hearing from professionals, whether it's researchers, clinicians, whatever, that our community is really special. When people come in and from the outside and they come into our space and they get to interact with us, they say, you know, there's just something special about this community. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact, not only that we're resilient, and I hear that all the time, you guys are resilient, but it's the fact that we're close knit and we are a very close community, and that's special, right? We are fighting together globally, and I hear it so many times where professionals say it's just a very special space, and you know, they love to come into kind of our HD community and see how wonderful it is.
And generally speaking, I've sort of witnessed firsthand sort of the resilience and strength of this community. And so it does hold a special place in my heart because everyone's all really quite united.
I was not planning on him saying that. I'm sorry. This is the first time I am watching this video, so that was not planned where I was saying that beforehand. It literally just happened. So sorry if there's a overlap there. It really is my first reaction to all of it.
By a shared goal, and that's really to find a cure for HD. So since discovery of the HD gene over 2 decades ago, really progress has really been mainly made possible through the work and time and efforts between both scientists, clinicians, but most importantly, people with HD and the broader HD community. One of my most memorable moments in my journey so far has been attending the HDYO Congress back in Glasgow in 2023. My first experience at such an event, and one I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm really proud to be part of this global effort, and I'm excited to present our findings from the HD-YAS study at the upcoming HDYO Congress this March in Prague. And I really look forward to reconnecting with all of the HD community members and continuing our shared fight against HD as well.
Yay, I'm so excited because I'm actually going to that event, so I will hopefully get to meet them.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like Sarah has been such a big catalyst for many young people to get involved in Huntington's disease. And we need you. So if you're interested in science, let us know because we can get you connected. Well, you know, as I mentioned, we're here to talk about the HD-YAS study, which stands for Young Adult, and the YA in that acronym. But before we get into those details, Sarah, I wondered if you could walk us backwards a little bit to talk about who has currently and in the past been the target of clinical trials. What's the stage that they're looking at? How are the stages determined? And what are some of the gaps that you all were trying to look at as we look at how we can eventually treat young people or have them participate in clinical trials?
I love that Jenna asked this question. I think it is such an important question. I just absolutely love she just asked this question.
So most of the clinical trials, I would say in the past have been focused on people with very symptomatic disease, where there also is evidence of functional decline. And what I mean by that is that things like work and driving and things that you do in your everyday life are already impacted, and people have neurological signs and cognitive thinking problems. Now, that was in the past. Now, that group of people are still being involved in trials, but one of the things that we've really pushed for is to go earlier in the disease course. And what we know is a person may be born with the Huntington's mutation, and we wanted to understand the disease across the whole spectrum of disease rather than relatively late in the symptoms. So as part of a big group, I led a working group to try and come up with a new staging system that also focused on very early aspects of the disease.
So I want to talk about the staging system really quick in case you guys are unaware. So this, I mentioned this earlier, the staging system is strictly for research. It is currently not used when it comes to the clinic, right? So if you go to a clinic, they're not going to put you in a staging system. And so when you hear about the staging system, it's strictly for clinical trials and for research and observational studies as well. So, but it's really good because it helps to provide the chance to be able to go into earlier HD and do what it is that Sarah's talking about. And it's just very grateful that she has done so much work on this.
People who are the people who make up the HDYO community. And so that was 3 or 4 years work, and we came up with the HD integrated staging system. It was published in 2022, and now every single industry partner and observational study are using this staging system, which is fantastic. So the staging system starts with the presence of the Huntington's disease genetic change, the CAG repeat expansion. And the staging system starts at stage 0. And at stage 0, which is typically, if someone has 42 repeats, will be typically in your 20s and early 30s. And stage 0 means basically in the staging system, nothing to find. You just have the presence of the Huntington's disease genetic change.
So stage 0 is pre-symptomatic.
And then it moves to stage 1, still very early in the course of the disease. Typically, if someone has 42 CAGs, that will be in their 30s and 40s potentially. And the only change in stage 1 disease is a small change in the size of your caudate or putamen volume, which is a measurement in with an MRI of a part of the brain called the striatum, which we know is affected early. And it's just a very small change. And then that's stage 1. And then stage 2 is when you get a small change in your total motor score or your symbol digit modality test. And that is a thinking test and a motor test, which we use commonly. And a small change in that is different from a matched control population.
Okay, and stage 2 is still it's still early HD, guys. So you've got stage 0 pre-symptomatic. Stage 1 is that beginning of changes in the brain and that prodromal going into stage 2.
Population then takes you into stage 2. So stage 2 is what we would have called the old prodromal group.
Yeah.
Stage 0 and 1 is what we would have called the old completely pre-symptomatic group.
There you go.
And then stage 3 is when there's functional decline. All of the trials in the past had been in stage 3, but in the whole lifetime of an individual who has the Huntington's disease genetic change means that stage 3 is quite late. And already trials are happening now in stage 2, which is the old prodromal, and we're designing trials now in stage 2 and early stage 3.
Okay, and I want to point out something too. I'm sure she's going to say this, and that's great. This is a recent thing where they're finally doing clinical trials in stage 2 or prodromal. That is something that is just in the past few years, and in study design and everything, and it's awesome. So excited that this is happening. So that's happening, and what she's about to say and what we've been saying is, okay, let's go even earlier than that. Let's see if we can get in earlier than that.
But one of the things, since I've been in the Huntington's disease field, and this was one of the reasons that we set up Track HD, which Rachel joined when we started in 2008, was to try and understand decades before symptom onset. And Track HD really had a huge number of important findings alongside Predict HD. And we found, but most of our data was from about 16 years before people's predicted onset, which would have been stage 1. But I wanted to know what really, I wanted to go back further in the time frame and try and understand that even though you may be born with the Huntington's disease genetic change, but we wanted to know that was it that your brain was completely fine, and then at a certain point it began to change. And so that's where the whole impetus and drive behind the HD young adult study came from, because we
Okay, so like I said, this is the first time I'm watching this. If I get really excited, I'm sorry. I am very, very excited about this research, and I'm very excited about listening to what she's saying. So
really wanted to study young people in their 20s and 30s, very far from predicted onset, who carried the Huntington's disease genetic change, but that had no symptoms. And that was where HD young adult study came from. All of our subjects were stage 0 and 1. And our original study, which was published in 2020, which Rachel was the first author of, showed that even though you're born with the Huntington's disease genetic change, that in stage 0 and in stage 1, there's absolutely nothing to find. Really, that you're completely well, your brain structure and function is essentially the same as matched young people controls, and that this is the time that we want to be able to treat early. And so that was a massive piece of work. However, the key thing we didn't have was how we would take that to a clinical trial. And this is where the current study has come, in that we brought everyone back 4.5 years later. And that longitudinal data, which is over time, now has established biomarker measures that we can then start thinking about future prevention studies. And the really good news is, and Rachel and Mina will talk a bit about this, is that people are functioning really well. There's no functional thinking problem or motor neurological decline in stage 0 and 1. You're completely well.
that is incredible. So we now know for sure that that is the case. Stage 0 and stage 1, with the staging system that Sarah Tabrizi has, and with the research she's done over not just a year. This is a long-term, years of work in these people. So it is confirmed that there is no functional change, and that's incredible.
But we have found some small measures that are called biomarkers that allow us to then think about how we would do prevention.
And that's huge for us, biomarkers. This is the part I'm so super excited about.
Trials. And the aim would be to prevent any symptoms. We would hope that if we can start prevention trials in stage 0 and 1, we may be able to prevent anyone going into stage 2 or stage 3. So that's the background to the HD young adult study and why we wanted it and why it was so important for trials.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And just as a reminder, with the integrated staging system, this isn't something that you'll necessarily hear in a neurologist office. You're not going to walk in and get your stage necessarily similarly to cancer diagnosis, which I think can sometimes be a little bit confusing, that this is a research tool to be able to measure and to be able to understand the progression of Huntington's disease, which is really groundbreaking and essential to research, especially as Sarah laid it out. And I think sometimes we work with young people who, with this data that you all will continue to talk about in this presentation and beyond, may say, I feel like I'm changing, even though there might not be any biomarker changes within the brain itself. And I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that there are many different layers to Huntington's disease. There's the biological impacts of Huntington's disease, but then there's also the social, psychological impacts that being in a family with Huntington's disease, personal experiences still play a huge role in how you feel, how you're able to cope and manage. And so that's why it's important to understand the biological impact and the science behind that, but then to also have the support systems built up to be able to help people manage and cope with some of those more symptoms that could be related to family trauma or long-term impacts of Huntington's disease.
That's absolutely right, Jenna.
Very well said, Jenna, and I'm so glad she brought that up.
Absolutely. Perfect. I completely agree. This is just to reiterate, or the staging system is a research tool that is really for helping us do earlier phase clinical trials.
Well, Nina and Rachel, I'm interested if you could dive into some of the details about the HD-YAS study, about who participated. We've heard a little bit about the goal, but any other details that you all wanted to add it in, just to kind of give a background before we really dive into some of those results.
So HD-YAS is a study of young adults with the HD gene expansion. And as Sarah said, these were way from expected clinical motor diagnosis, about 20 years from clinical motor diagnosis. And that's when a doctor determines that someone's showing significant movement problems, equated to stage 3 that Sarah just described. And we compared this group with matched controls. Generally, our controls were either partners of those with the gene expansion who weren't at risk, or siblings who'd had the test but tested negative. And so that meant that we could really closely match factors like age and education and environment. So if we did see a difference between the groups, we could be more confident that that was actually down to having the HD gene expansion. Our aim really was to identify the earliest signs of Huntington's disease. But that's really challenging in our gene expansion group. As Sarah said, they are absolutely well. They're not showing any obvious signs of the disease. So we then have to look at other things that maybe aren't as visible. So difference that might be present on a brain scan or in blood or spinal fluids. And we hope that by finding these earliest signs, we could use these as markers of disease. And that is our ultimate aim, is to use them in clinical trials, particularly prevention treatments. But we need something to measure first to show us whether the drug's working or not. So that was the aim. Just to tell you a little bit about what the day involved. So there was actually a day and a half of testing. Our doctor would test for any clinical signs and took some blood samples. Then our psychologist assessed thinking and behaviour. Then in the afternoon, the participants went into our MRI scanner for about 90 minutes. And that gives us really detailed information about how the brain looks and how it functions. The next day, they had a lumbar puncture where a doctor draws a fluid from the bottom of the spine. That's the fluid that bathes the brain, and it can tell us a lot about what's going on in the brain. We can look at the levels of, for example, proteins to see if they might be indicating some sort of disease process related to Huntington's disease. So, as I say, this was a day and a half of testing, and we're really in awe of our YAS participants who do it without complaining, come back year after year, and are just dedicate their time. And we really wouldn't be here talking about it if they didn't do that. So yeah, that's sort of what the data involved. Would you like me to talk about the results, or do you have any questions? Yeah, okay. So the most important news, and this is follow-up to, as Sarah said, at the first assessment, we found no evidence of any problems with function at all. But this time we're looking 4.5 years later, and we really didn't know what we would see. So the most important news, which you're all completely delighted about, was that our gene expanded group are not declining over time. So they think and behave exactly like our controls. We did find some evidence of subtle changes in brain structure and blood and spinal fluid. But this is also good news. As we mentioned, we have to have measurements to put into clinical trials to see whether anything's having an effect. And we just had one surprising result. And really very interesting, which was that we identified a process from our blood samples which helps us understand how the cells in the brain might start to suffer damage due to the disease. So it's called somatic CAG expansion. It's in the title of our paper, it was really big news. And it involves ongoing expansion of the inherited CAG. So we've already talked about people inheriting CAG of 40, etc.
So there is research out there. This has been published. You can actually search this to learn more about it as well. I would highly recommend actually reading it because it's very interesting to know how this works. I mean, obviously she's giving an overview, but if you're more into the details, definitely look it up.
But over time, this CAG can expand in cells, and it's only when it hits a certain threshold that then the brain cells start to degenerate. But this sort of unexpected finding gave us a really valuable insight. So if we know that that's a really early disease process, then that's a potential target for therapeutics. So if we can intervene and disrupt that process this early on, 20 years before onset, then we've got a really good chance of slowing down the progress of the disease.
Yeah, that's huge for us. That finding was, I mean, it's yeah, incredible.
So one of our breaking down barriers that we looked at, we did look at somatic expansion along with HD-YAS. So I think that's worth a look back at to fully understand that, because I think it's important to say when you're targeting somatic expansion only, you're not lowering the Huntington protein as far as what your CAG repeat is you're cutting off that expansion that is typically the onset of symptoms and why people progress at different rates. Because in a family, you may have someone with 41 who shows symptoms at 35, and you may have another family member at 41 who shows symptoms at 80 at the beginning.
I love Jenna. She breaks it down so well in a way to understand. So grateful that she's doing this and that she broke that down for everybody.
Of it. So it's really cutting off that expansion is what I'm hearing from you, Rachel.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely HD-YAS is a good place to go for an explainer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really important data. What do you do with it? What do you do with this data? What does this really mean when you are taking this piece and trying to turn it into something impactful, either for research or the community?
So when there's a number of things that we have done with the data. One is that we're publishing it all on Friday, and it's going to be shared open access, so anyone can access the paper. We also did.
This is great too, guys. Seriously, that's very exciting that it's open access to anybody.
Did a webinar for our participants, the HD young adult participants, just before Christmas, where I presented the results, what it meant for them, and what the future plans were. And Mina will talk a little bit more about that. And that went down very well, and we're really excited and encouraging them to come back for their next visit. And so the important thing with these data is that we are beginning to pave the way to design future prevention studies. So I was invited by the FDA and the Critical Path Institute, the Regulatory Science Consortium for Huntington's disease, to present the data on the 16th of July to the FDA in a roundtable meeting, and I presented the HD young adult data, and we had a really good discussion over 4 hours about how we would use this data to design future studies in stage 0 and 1 when there is nothing clinical to find. People are completely clinically well, like Rachel mentioned, but how we could design prevention studies with biomarkers to help us guide whether a therapy is making a difference. And we received very positive feedback.
Yes, this is, I'm glad that she brought this up. This is something that I knew happened, and I didn't know if I was allowed to talk about, but since she mentioned it, Sarah has been just, again, just phenomenal. But, you know, the fact that she had this meeting with the FDA, really started a conversation that needed to be had. And it really opened doors for us as we were going into the FDA meeting, in November. And these conversations are continuing. And that is what is huge, is that, Sarah is very much part of these conversations. She's not, it wasn't just one conversation, but she started the important conversations about getting into the HD earlier, with the FDA, and with CPATH, and she's continuing that. And we are hearing, at least from an advocate side, very positive things, and things continuing to move in the right direction. So if I say nothing else in this video, just huge thanks to Sarah Tabrizi for doing that and having those conversations with the FDA, and really getting things moving.
They were very impressed with the data, the quality of the data collection, the drive of the participants, and the commitment of the participants to get this critical data and the importance of the cohort. They were supportive of future prevention studies in stage 0 and 1. And the key point that they also added was that for future prevention studies in stage 0 and 1, that it was key that safety was an important issue. And the reason that's important is that the regulators, or the people who tell us whether we can do a clinical trial in different countries, and the FDA is one of them, and the European Medicines Agency is another. In the UK, it's the MHRA. One of their criteria for giving interventions to people who are completely well, and this is for other diseases in particular as well, is that the treatment has to have some safety data. So what we're using this data now is to think about and build the groundwork and the framework for us to do a future prevention study in stage 0 and 1. Now, that isn't really quick. We have a number of things that we have to do to get there. We have to liaise and talk to different industry partners that are developing therapies that are in the clinic now. Because we then want to partner with one of them once they have good safety data. And most of those studies are studying people with HD integrated staging system, later stage 2 and early stage 3, but that's critical safety data. If that has good safety data, those studies, we will then be able to go to the regulators and say, we have designed a clinical trial for stage 0 and 1 with the measures that we have established in the HD young adult study, and we want to test whether these measures change with the drug. And if we can prevent these measures, which we know are markers of brain nerve damage, that if we can prevent those markers progressing, then we know from the staging system, because it always goes in order, is that we then maybe prevent them going into the clinical symptoms part in stage 2. So that's what.
That's so exciting, guys. Like, so basically, she's saying, you know, we've got clinical trials that are ongoing right now, right? One of the things that all of the regulatory bodies require is that safety data, which is, you know, you go through phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3. And so basically, and right now, you know, none of them are in stage 0 is stage 1. They're doing stage 2, stage 3. But basically what she's saying is, you know, let's use PTC Therapeutics for a minute, because they're getting ready to start clinical trials in the US for phase 3. Okay. So what she's saying is that eventually, since they are doing, you know, stage 2, stage 3, and they're going into phase 3, that since they have their safety data, they could then approach PTC Therapeutics and see if, if since their safety data is good, whatever, they could then go to them and say, okay, well, let's get this into earlier HD. And they have it already set up to give to PTC to be able to do that. That's incredible, right? That saves time, and it's just major collaboration and is so exciting. Because then you look at these things that have, that they're researching right now. And I know specifically, PTC, their data has been very good. So that's why I'm picking on them. And I know they're going into phase 3 and they're going into the US and they're going to be dealing with the FDA. So that's why I'm picking on them. But that's so exciting because it means that from this study, they are prepared, or they are preparing to be able to go to somebody like PTC and say, okay, you've got the safety data. Let's see if this will work in early HD, in stage 0, stage 1 of HD, and get this moving. And that accelerates things for us. And it truly is just collaboration, and it's so cool. I know I'm geeking out right now, but sorry, guys, it's just very exciting news.
What we're going to do with the information. My big goal now is to work on getting funding to take this forward. So it's all about applying for funding, talking to industry partners, and over the next few years, planning what I hope will be a prevention study in Huntington's disease. And that's my goal. But obviously, it depends on getting funding, which I'm working very hard on, and also engaging with our industry partners to what I think is going to be the best potential drug. One point about somatic expansion, which Rachel talked about, and which is a big part of our paper, is that there are no drugs near the clinic for that. There are many drugs in development, gene therapy, oral tablets, antisense oligonucleotides, for example, but they are quite a few years from coming to the clinic. And those first trials will not be in stage 0 and 1 because you can't do a first in human, and it's all about safety. So those trials will come later, but Huntington lowering, or lowering the protein, is also critically important because that is lowering the toxic protein. Somatic expansion increases the repeat size, like you said, Jenna, but actually the way nerve cells end up having problems is because of the toxic protein. And so Huntington lowering is a really critical, important tool there. So the first...
So remember, I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but my understanding is instead of, they were talking about cutting off the somatic expansion, right? And right now we don't have that. We have things that are lowering Huntington, which is slowing the progression of the disease, because once the CAG hits a certain threshold in our cells, it can no longer function normally and things start to go downhill. And it's like a snowball effect, right? Where it's going to build up speed as it collects more snow. As you have that snowball going down, it's collecting more and more. The number is rising as far as the Huntington goes, but it's collecting more snow, but it's moving faster too. And so that's why Huntington lowering is so important. And one of the reasons I have stressed this, and being in research early, when you have something that slows the progression of the disease, it's going to buy us some time until we can get to this thing that she's talking about with cutting it off, and these prevention studies. So rather than just a treatment for somebody who is symptomatic and it's going to slow that progression, you're talking about something that's going to completely prevent it and cut it, right? And that's what she's talking about. And we're not there yet, but those studies are extremely important because they're buying us the time. They're slowing down that snowball effect and keeping it from becoming this full force, full blown HD And, you know, that's extremely, extremely important.
First trial we will probably try and plan for in stage 0 and 1 is a Huntington lowering one. And that we hope will be in hopefully by 2027. We're still following up the young adult cohort.
Okay, that's really exciting too. So she's saying hopefully by 2027, they're going to be trying to do this in, you know, using this in a Huntington lowering. That's her, you know, that's her goal, what she's hoping for. The fact that she's looking at 2027, that's incredible. That she's moving fast. She's wanting this to get done. And that's exciting.
And with all the regulatory submissions that we have to do, I would hope we would be able to start a potential trial if we get successful with the funding for it in early 2027. Fingers crossed. That's the plan, the goal.
Fingers crossed.
No, and that's
with
really
you.
interesting, Sarah. And I think it's important for the community to understand that relying on research data from trials that are happening now from Enroll HD is really important. They all come into play together.
Yeah.
So just like Sarah mentioned, which we've had such a call to action with the HDYO community, is why aren't trials going younger? Why aren't they going earlier? And so this is a really important educational piece, is that they don't want to do anything that has not been measured for safety. And so to be able to use this information actually helps speed up the process of it, because clinical trial, preclinical research takes.
I'm telling you, I just love you, Jenna, because you explain it and you get it and you break it down.
Very long, slow.
Before and if it ever comes to the public to participate in an actual trial. So this is a really smart, helpful way to tackle some of those questions earlier to expedite this as quickly as possible, it sounds like.
Yes, very awesome.
Absolutely. That's
so cool.
Absolutely correct.
Well, Mina, so I had a chance to kind of be a fly on the wall in the meeting where you chatted with some of the participants to present the information. What did they say? I mean, they've spent years of their lives participating. This has a lot of implications. What was some of the feedback, concerns, excitement? How did they feel?
So as Sarah mentioned, Sarah and I hosted a webinar shortly before Christmas on the 19th of December to share the study results.
Okay, can I just also say kudos to Sarah and her team for sharing the results with the participants before any type of press release or publication, and really just kind of letting them know what's going on. That is super cool. I'm so glad that they have done that and gotten their feedback, and that they're continuing this. But just kudos to them. I love seeing this type of stuff.
We felt it was really essential to prioritize feedback to our participants first, as like you say, Jenna, their commitment, dedication, voluntarily involvement has been sort of invaluable to getting to this stage. We've had participants, I mean, the retention rate of our cohort is actually incredible, from 2017 to when I started in 2022 and to where we're at now. We're sort of in the midst of the third time point, and it's just generally an amazing effort. And I don't think I've ever seen that in any sort of research group. So I think that's another factor that really makes it sort of worth.
Okay, so what they're talking about is retention rate. A lot of times in studies and in clinical trials, one of the biggest problems we have in HD is recruitment for things. But the other side of it is retention. So keeping people in a clinical trial or an observational study because of whatever reason, whether there's family issues, because obviously a lot of us are young caregivers. A lot of us are in college or, you know, working or doing all of these things. And it's really hard to be able to commit to a study or a clinical trial in this point of our lives, especially in a young adult study when they're looking at pre-symptomatic. And so the fact that they have had a retention rate that is so good, and like he mentioned, they have not seen in any other study, that's incredible, because a lot of times it's hard to do that. So that's what they're talking about and why that's exciting.
Pursuing And generally speaking, the overall response from our participants was overwhelmingly positive. Many participants expressed that the findings actually gave them renewed hope, with sort of comments like making them quite emotional in actually the best way. They were very engaged. We had 25 questions through our interactive.
So the other thing I want to point out, I was not part of the young adult study, but I'm really excited to hear that people were pretty positive about it, because I know for me personally, being able to participate in observational studies, and now I've participated in a clinical trial, and it was very empowering. And I think out of everything that I have done since I tested positive, being able to participate in research and help to provide that data, and to provide my feedback in what they're doing has just been empowering and makes me feel like I'm part of the solution. As Jimmy Pollard would say, we are the cure. And and it can't be done without us. And so to hear others had really positive feedback for this makes me really happy, because we should feel empowered by this, guys. This is great stuff, and this is getting done, and we're going to be able to accelerate research because of people participating in research, because of young adults being able to make time on their calendars and in their lives to participate in this groundbreaking research that's huge.
Slido link, and a lot of the questions actually ranged from inquiries about future treatments and clinical trial timelines. But interestingly, despite them being so selfless and not volunteering their time, they were actually asking questions about how they could further support our research and further support fundraising efforts, which is a test.
Yeah, I literally was sitting here as Sarah was talking, and she said, fingers crossed. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I help you? Like, what do I do to help you move this forward and get this done? Yeah.
To their commitment to the cause. Some participants did express some concerns about the challenges in finding a cure, but overall, the feedback generally highlighted a strong sense of hope and appreciation for being kept well informed.
I think that's really exciting, because that's some of the advocacy work that we do with working with our industry partners and regulators, is about what is the readiness for young people to participate. And we know they're ready.
This question is asked all the time, guys. I can't stress it enough, because I have done multiple advisory board meetings. I've talked to so many different stakeholders, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, researchers, whatever, whether it's through the podcast, the Help for HD podcast, or just on my own and participating in things. And it's the big question everybody has: how ready are people, how willing are younger people in participating in things? And they're wanting to know if we are willing to do it. And so I'm glad that also came up and became a part of this conversation.
Yeah, they sure are. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is really important, because the retention rate of young adults taking time off of work, traveling, this was a specific site study. And
I promise you, I did not see this before. Literally, I did not know what they were going to say. So I realized there's overlap in what we're saying, but I did not see this before.
And it was in one country, but still, that's a lot of commitment, because you're talking about lumbar punctures, an overnight stay, multiple, check-ins and things like that. That takes time away from everyday life. But they were ready, and they want to do more. And I think that's a really important takeaway for this community. I want to highlight one comment that made me smile and tear up a little bit. And I don't know who this is, because it was all de-identified, but someone on the call said, shoot, I haven't been putting any money in my retirement. And I thought, and that's a very far off sentiment, because we're really in the beginning stages of understanding this and what this could mean. But that level of hope for themselves and thinking about the future is really exciting.
Yes, because now it's actually something we can see, something that's confirmed that we know is being worked on, actively being worked on, right? And so it gives us that we hate to hope, right? Because we've been burned in the past. But how do you not hope when they've provided such groundbreaking research and they're trying to get it done in a very timely manner? Yes, of course, we're going to sit there and think, man, I didn't put money into my retirement. I should be doing that, because you can actually think about that for yourself.
And I just
Yeah.
got the giggles.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. There may have been an expletive, I think, in there too when they wrote it, but but I think it's such an important groundbreaking study for a lot of different reasons, and I'm so glad to hear that the retention was so high in this, because it's also a longitudinal study, so it's a long study in general to follow these individuals. I can imagine as people are learning about this, you're going to have a lot of inquiries for how can I sign up, where can I learn more, how can I stay up to date? What would you recommend?
So generally, in terms of to stay informed really about sort of the progress of our study, the HD young adult study, and clinical trials, future clinical trials, I think generally participants as well as the wider HD community can really access updates through reliable sources. One being HD-Buzz, as we've alluded to during this call, really excellent resource, really clear, really accessible. And they can visit the website on hdbuzz.net. And with regards to sort of UCL and the HD Young Adult study, we're going to continue to share updates on our study progress and related research on our Huntington's Disease Centre website, which we can.
So this is exciting too, because they're not just stopping here. They're going to continue this HD-YAS research, which gives us even more data that we need. So that's really exciting.
Share with you, Jenna, with the rest of the HDYO. But we'll also continue to organise webinars and hopefully update the participants directly through newsletters. And also when sort of I'm doing the third time point visits at the moment, so it's also nice to touch base with participants in person as well. And sort of we're very open as well to sort of having questions from the wider community. So if anyone has any questions or wants to receive updates, they're welcome to reach out to our team. We can provide our email addresses and ways to contact us.
And for anybody coming to Congress too, Mina mentioned that he will be presenting this there, but also there will be a table to be able to learn more about that. So that's a good time to have one-on-one conversations if you happen to be there in person. Sarah, sorry, I jumped in before you.
Oh, no, this is really important. I wanted to add, although our study is just occurring in the UK at one study site, and people will see this from all over the world, I want to reinforce to young people that the way to get involved that is available to most people is through Enroll. So if we want to start planning future prevention studies, obviously the HD young adult cohort data is critical, but we don't want to do the study just in one country. And so when we come to doing a very big study in stage 0 and 1, which is my hope for the future, then we would be recruiting those people from Enroll. So if you're not already part of Enroll, sign up. You can do it in a way that you don't need to know anything about the feedback of your assessments.
I'm curious, anybody who watches, if you're already part of Enroll or not, and how many young people are actually part of Enroll, and do you feel that it's the way to go, or should, let me throw another question at you. Do you feel that we as a community, a global community, should be looking at maybe another way to get the data for very early HD, for those of us who are very, very early. So should we be going to those enroll visits, or is that too difficult? Should we be looking at another way to capture it? I'm curious to know what people's thoughts are on that. And, if you do go to an enroll visit, how you feel about that. Just throwing it out there.
You don't need to know further information, but you just need to turn up once a year for the assessment. So if you're listening to this and want the potential to get involved in future studies, then please sign up for Enroll HD.
Absolutely. And we can help connect people with sites too. Information's on the Enroll HD website. But that really is important. And there's so many people who participate in Enroll, but they need even more data because they're going to as well focus on understanding the earlier symptoms and experiences of those in Huntington's disease. So it's a really important piece to get involved in research. And but sometimes it's not easy to do, but that's why.
Especially now. Right now, we're just at a pivotal point, and it's really important for us to get involved in research. That being said, as Jenna was alluding to, it's not always easy to do. So how do we make it easier for those of us, who do have a hard time being able to go once a year and participate in an Enroll HD visit? I'd really love some feedback on that. And, what would make it easier for you? Would it be a virtual option? Would it be an app? I really just would love some brainstorming on it and some feedback on that, because these are the barriers that we've got to find solutions to.
Why lean on your support system? Contact us. We can walk you through it. Contact other members of the community, your site near you, if you're fortunate to live near a site. But learn more, at least do the step to kind of learn more to see if it's something that would be right for you. And as Sarah mentioned, you don't have to know your genetic status. You don't have to be told anything about your progression. It's just a way to be able to, it's a good tester to see if you can participate one day a year in an Enroll HD study. Is that feasible for you? Because when you participate in a clinical trial, it's going to be a lot more in depth, and you're going to have a lot more of a commitment. So this is a good tester to try that out.
I will say that, yes, I do agree. When you participate in a clinical trial, it's more in depth, but at the same time, a lot of things are moving to virtual. So, again, that's why I asked the question of, if you can't participate, once a year in a Enroll HD visit, that's okay. But what other options would you be able to do? What would it be? Virtual? Would it be an app? Would it be, a telehealth visit? Would it be nothing at all? Like, I really would like to know the feedback on that.
And with clinical trials coming down the line in a couple of years, hopefully looking at this demographic, it's good to get primed, get ready mentally, emotionally, and stand up and say that you're here to researchers and interested in learning more whenever trials are available.
Absolutely. Very well said, Jenna. Perfect.
All right. Anything that we missed? I mean, this is just so exciting.
No, this is we're committed to taking the data forward and using it to try and help get money and design a prevention study. That's the goal. And we're on it. So we will give everyone updates through HDYO. And obviously, as our research progresses, we will give presentations and tell everyone what's going on.
Absolutely. And coming up here, once this airs, we'll have an HDU community story. So we'll have some of our ambassadors share their thoughts. Because I think what's great about the YAS program, and probably why you see a lot of that retention, is the engagement one-on-one with the participants. And so that's something that HDYO is really passionate about. We don't do anything without talking to the community first and understanding if it would be impactful. And so I feel like that's a really important sentiment that you all expressed with doing different surveys, talking with people, working with them one-on-one. So we want to hear directly from the community to understand what are their thoughts or concerns or readiness for future trials. So,
and I think one thing, Jenna, that is important that you actually mentioned is it isn't very easy to come up for these assessments. And I want to acknowledge that, in that people would often say to me, the day I have to come up for my once a year appointment is the worst day, because it reminds me that I carry the Huntington's disease gene. And the rest of the time I forget about it because I feel fine. And so coming up for assessments, whether it's in the HD young adult study or whether it's in Enroll, is stressful. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that, but to let people know that there are ways that you can be supported through that, because we absolutely know it isn't easy to come up and have thinking tests and you're really worried about how your thinking is. And so you
Yes, they're making a really great point. It's not easy. It is, yes, you are going into an emotional space that is hard to be in, but it's also empowering, because you also realize that you are part of the solution, guys. I mean, think about the people in this study, okay? Because of them, we have results, groundbreaking research results that is going to lead to prevention studies. That's what this means. So yes, sometimes it's uncomfortable to participate. Sometimes it's emotionally uncomfortable, mentally uncomfortable, and draining and exhausting, all the terms you want to use. Sometimes it feels like you're going through a grieving process, depending on what you're doing. But it's necessary and it's rewarding in the end. And it is going to move things forward for us. And so if you are wanting to participate, but you feel that it is very hard and you're not sure you can do it, please reach out, whether it's to me, somebody in the community, talk to somebody and really put your feelings out there and explain how you're feeling. Because as I believe Sarah's getting ready to say, you can be supported through this. And HDYO has a wonderful group of ambassadors, but also just there are a ton of us out there who are participating in studies and in trials, and we know what it feels like, and we know that hesitation of going and the feeling, and you are not alone, and we're happy to talk with you and talk you through it.
You can share with the investigators, you can share with HDYO, you can reach out with questions, because we want to acknowledge this isn't easy, but commitment to research for young people is what will help us get to trials, and also to be vocal with the community that you want trials in the future, because that's where the regular.
Yes, because if we are not vocal, if they do not hear from us, the people who are affected, the ones who need to participate, the ones who are, are literally dealing with it, then they don't know that we're willing to take the risk. They don't know, they think if we're not speaking up as the community, then we don't want it. It's not important to us. And why would they spend the time to look through any of it if we're not showing an interest? They have to hear from us. It doesn't matter about our patient advocacy groups. Doesn't matter what pharma says. Doesn't matter what the researchers are saying. Ultimately, it comes back to, how do the people feel? How do the participants feel? How does the community feel? How do the caregivers feel? They want to know how invested we are and if we want it.
Regulators take interest. They want to hear from young people that they do want to be involved in trials. So there's a lot you can do, but there's also a lot of support that can be offered for giving up your time, energy, and it's emotional, and that you will have support.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to, as we mentioned, to acknowledge that Enroll HD isn't in every single country.
Exactly.
But things like our research survey are.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about how can you lend your voice, how can you share your experiences, by participating in that, we're able to grab numbers of people in different regions to be able to say, look, this is the feeling of this region. This could be their readiness. And we've got some really exciting things coming down the line to further kind of measure some of those personal experiences with Huntington's disease. So there are a lot of ways that you can participate. And I know sometimes it can get a little bit taxing and you have survey fatigue, but it all matters because we use that information and we share that with this team. We share that with all of our research partners, advocacy partners, to be able to say, this is what the community is telling us that matters. So, so please do consider participating in any kind of research, even if it's from the safety of behind a screen. Well, this has just been really great. Sarah, Rachel, Mina, thank you so much for taking the time, for you and your entire team, for the amount of work that you've put into this, to be fantastic cohort and participants of HD-YAS. So grateful for your dedication and sometimes sacrifice of time and nerves and everything else that we've discussed, but this can't be done without you. And so we're so appreciative for you all, for your participation, and letting us learn more about you. And again, follow up on through social media, through different research publications, HD-Buzz. We'll keep you all updated. We will be recording our Congress session, so the formal presentation will be available online as well if you're not able to attend about HD-YAS. But this is a really interesting and exciting first step into understanding how we can do a clinical trial into this community, which is really powerful. So thank you all so much for your time and being here.
Thank you, Jenna, for organising this, and thank you to our participants in the HD Young Adult Study, and thank you to the listeners. I hope you find this useful, and reach out if you want to learn more.
Very exciting. All right, thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Lovely to
Take
talk
care.
to you.
All the
Bye.
best. Bye. Bye.
Wow, guys. So just, I know I said a lot of stuff through there, but just, this is groundbreaking research. You know, it's one thing to obviously, you hear about, oh, well, this is what we think, but to have something published and available makes it confirmed in research and then can move forward. So this is groundbreaking research for us. And I just can't thank Sarah Tabrizi and her team enough for doing this research. And not only that, but wanting to move it forward so quickly. You know, as she said, she's wanting to get things done. She's wanting to have things going for, you know, her goal is 2027, and that in the research world is so fast. So I'm very grateful for that as well. But I'm excited. I am excited about the research. This is great. And I'm excited to help in whatever way I can. If you are wanting me to do more videos like this and do reaction videos, you guys let me know. I also thank you to Jenna with HDYO for making this conversation happen, for asking really important questions and clarifying things in a way for people to understand. I think that's really important. So thank you, Jenna, for that. Wow. Yeah. Super excited about all of this. Super excited to see where it goes. Excited about how fast it's going to go. And just really want to be able to help. So I will always keep you guys up to date on research on my end. You can follow me on social media, but also on Help for HD's social media platforms. I do the podcast for Help for HD and constantly have new shows every week. So you can follow me on there. You can follow me now on YouTube as I am getting this channel up and going now, and will hopefully be providing you with new content more regularly. But I really wanted to try this reaction video and see how I felt about it and see how you guys felt about it. So hopefully you liked it and we'll watch again. And, you know, I've been through research. I've participated for years now in observational studies and in a clinical trial now. If you have questions and you're interested in getting involved in research, please feel free to reach out to me. You can ask me anything. I am an open book when it comes to this stuff. I'm constantly advocating as well. I have regular conversations with CPATH and am doing a lot of advocacy work, especially this year. As I said, last year was a pivotal time, and this year is just as pivotal for us when it comes to research and getting things moving forward. So feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at lauren@help4hd.org. That's HELP, the number 4, hd.org. Or reach out to me on social media. Happy to talk to you. But I definitely feel like this is our time to be hopeful, guys. This is something that we should be excited about and hopeful for. And let's just keep on going, keep at it and do what we can for each other and keep collaborating. So very exciting times, guys. Well, that's it for me. And I will catch you guys later. Take care.